The birthday cake had 70 candles on it, and Mom looked happy as she posed for photos with my brother Derek and his wife Amanda. I stood off to the side, holding a glass of sparkling cider, watching the family celebration from the periphery where I'd existed for the past 3 years. "Sarah, get in the photo," Aunt Diane called half-heartedly, but nobody moved to make space for me. "I'm good here," I said quietly. It had been like this since I'd moved away. The family had decided I was running from my problems, abandoning my responsibilities, choosing some mysterious new life over them. They didn't understand. They couldn't understand. And I couldn't tell them the truth. The truth was classified. 3 years ago I'd witnessed something I shouldn't have. I'd been working as a senior accountant at Morrison & Price, a mid-sized firm in Philadelphia, when I'd discovered irregularities in one of our biggest clients' accounts. Not small errors. Not accidental discrepancies. Systematic money laundering tied to an organized crime syndicate that federal prosecutors had been trying to crack for a decade. I'd done the right thing. I'd reported it. I'd testified before a grand jury. And then I'd become a protected federal witness under the U.S. Marshals Service Witness Security Program. Not full WITSEC. I hadn't needed a complete identity change, but enough protection that my location was classified, my communications were monitored for my safety, and certain assets had been placed under federal protection. Including the house I'd owned in Philadelphia, the 3-bedroom colonial I'd bought 5 years ago in a quiet neighborhood near Rittenhouse Square. The house was worth $900,000 now, nearly triple what I'd paid. The market had exploded. But I couldn't sell it. Couldn't live in it. Couldn't even visit it without U.S. Marshal approval and escort. It sat empty, maintained by a federal property management service, part of my protected assets until the trial concluded and the organization was fully dismantled. My family knew none of this. They thought I'd had a breakdown and run away. They thought the house was abandoned, forgotten, a symbol of my failure to commit to anything. "So Sarah," Derek said loudly as we moved from cake to coffee in Mom's living room, "we need to talk about your property situation." I looked up from my phone. "Pie what?" "Your house." He said it the way you might say your mess, or your problem. "The one you abandoned 3 years ago. The one that's just sitting there empty while you're off doing whatever it is you do." "I didn't abandon it," I said carefully. "I had to relocate for work." "Work?" Amanda laughed, that brittle sound I'd learned to hate. "You mean that mysterious job nobody's allowed to know about? The one that pays so little you can't even visit for holidays?" "I'm here now," I pointed out. "After missing 3 Christmases, 2 Thanksgivings and Mom's last birthday," Derek shot back. "You show up for one party and think that makes up for everything?" Dad set down his coffee cup. "Derek, what's this about?" "I'm getting to it." Derek pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, then held it up showing what looked like a real estate listing. "Your empty house is sold. I found a buyer, negotiated a great price and closed the deal last week. Someone had to pay your debts and handle your responsibilities." The room went very quiet. I stared at the screen, seeing photos of my house. My front porch, my living room, my kitchen, listed under sold, with a price of $875,000. "You sold my house," I said slowly. "I handled your abandoned property," he corrected. "The place has been sitting empty for 3 years, Sarah. You weren't paying the property taxes, weren't maintaining it. The neighborhood association was threatening liens. I did what you should have done years ago. I took responsibility." "How?" I asked, my voice very calm despite the ice flooding my veins. "How did you sell a house you don't own?" "Power of attorney," Amanda said proudly. "Derek got it signed 2 years ago when you were still barely communicating with the family. You gave him authority to handle your affairs in Pennsylvania." I had never signed any such document. "I never gave you power of attorney," I said quietly. "Sure you did." Derek pulled up another photo on his phone. "Right here. Your signature notarized and everything. You were so scattered back then you probably don't even remember." I looked at the document on his screen. It did have my signature. Or rather, a very good forgery of my signature. The notary stamp looked official. The date was from 18 months ago, during a period when I'd been in protective custody in another state, completely unreachable by my family. "That's not my signature," I said. "Oh, come on." Derek rolled his eyes. "Don't start making excuses. This is classic Sarah. Avoid responsibility, blame everyone else, refuse to deal with reality. Where's the money? I asked. What money? The $875,000 from the sale. I used it to pay off your debts, Derek said. Property taxes, homeowners association fees, maintenance costs, legal fees for the sale. And honestly, after everything Mom and Dad have done for you over the years, I think they deserved some compensation for the stress you've caused. Mom looked uncomfortable. Derek, we didn't ask. You didn't have to ask, he interrupted. Sarah abandoned you. She disappeared for 3 years, barely called, never visited. The least she owes you is the money from that house she was never going to live in anyway. How much? I asked, still in that calm voice. How much went to Mom and Dad? $200,000, Amanda said. Which is more than fair considering they raised her for 18 years and she's been nothing but ungrateful. And the rest? Like I said, debts, fees, expenses. Derek shrugged. There's about $50,000 left. I was going to give it to you today, actually. Consider it a gift for finally showing up to something. He pulled out an envelope from his jacket pocket and tossed it on the coffee table in front of me. There's a check. You should be thanking me. I didn't touch the envelope. You forged my signature, I said quietly. You sold a house you had no legal right to sell. You took nearly $900,000 that wasn't yours. And you think I should thank you? I handled your mess, Derek snapped. Something you've never been capable of doing yourself. You ran away from your life, Sarah. You left everything behind like it was garbage. So yes, I stepped up. I took care of business. I did what needed to be done. Derek did us all a favor, Uncle Mike added from his chair by the window. That house was becoming a neighborhood eyesore. Empty properties bring down property values. He protected your investment and everyone else's. He committed fraud, I said. The room erupted in protest. Don't you dare, Mom said, tears forming. Don't you dare accuse your brother of anything. He's been here. He's been present. He's taken care of things while you've been off living your secret life, refusing to tell us anything, treating this family like we're strangers. We don't even know where you live, Aunt Diane added. You won't tell us what you do for work. You show up once a year if we're lucky, stay for an hour and leave. And now you want to complain that Derek handled your abandoned property? You should be ashamed. The house wasn't abandoned, I said. It was being maintained. Property taxes were paid. The mortgage was current. Someone was taking care of it. Who? Derek challenged. Who was maintaining it? Because I drove by there a dozen times and it always looked empty. No cars, no lights, nothing. That doesn't mean abandoned. It means you weren't there, Amanda said sharply. It means you left it behind just like you left this family behind. Derek did what any responsible person would do, he cleaned up your mess. I want to see the sale documents, I said. Why? Derek's eyes narrowed. So you can try to undo it? Find some technicality? The sale is final, Sarah. Closed. Done. The new owners take possession next week. I want to see the documents, I repeated. No. Derek crossed his arms. You don't get to waltz back into our lives after 3 years and start making demands. You lost that right when you disappeared. You want documents? Hire a lawyer. Oh wait, you can't afford a lawyer because you pissed away your career along with everything else. I took a slow breath. My phone had been vibrating in my pocket for the past 5 minutes. I knew who it was. The Marshal's service monitored my location at all times. When I'd entered Mom's house, they'd logged it. Standard procedure. But they'd also likely noticed the elevated stress indicators from my biometric monitoring. The fitness watch I wore wasn't just a fitness watch. Family nodded approvingly, I said quietly, looking around the room. Mom, Dad, Aunt Diane, Uncle Mike, my cousins Josh and Emma. All of them looking at me with disappointment. All of them certain Derek had done the right thing. Finally making sense, Derek said. Accept it and move on, Sarah. You're getting $50,000 you didn't earn. Take it and be grateful. I remained silent. My phone buzzed again. Then again. The doorbell rang. I'll get it, Emma said, walking toward the front door. I heard her open it. Heard her confused voice. Can I help you? Then a male voice, professional and firm. U.S. Marshals Service. We need to speak with Sarah Mitchell immediately. The living room went completely silent. Emma appeared in the doorway, her face pale. Sarah? There are There are federal marshals here for you. I'll handle it, I said, standing up. Two men in suits entered the living room behind Emma. I recognized Deputy Marshal James Walsh immediately. He'd been my primary contact for 3 years. The other man was unfamiliar, younger, his hand resting near his hip in a way that suggested he was armed. Ms. Mitchell, Walsh said, his voice professional but his eyes concerned. We need to speak with you. Now. What's going on? Dad demanded. Why are federal marshals at my house? Sir, I need you to remain seated, the younger marshal said firmly. Everyone stay where you are. Ms. Mitchell, Walsh continued, focusing on me, we have a situation. Our property monitoring systems flagged unusual activity at your Philadelphia residence. A sale was recorded. Can you explain this? I didn't authorize any sale, I said clearly. I haven't been to that property in 3 years as per program protocols. Derek had gone very white. Program? What program? Sir, who are you? Walsh asked, turning to my brother. Derek Mitchell. I'm her brother. I sold the house because she abandoned it. I had power of attorney. You had what? Walsh's voice could have cut glass. Power of attorney. Legal authority to handle her affairs. The sale was completely legitimate. Deputy Marshal Chin, Walsh said to the younger man, call it in. Possible federal property fraud, witness security violation, and unauthorized access to protected assets. What the hell is happening? Derek shouted. Walsh turned to him, his expression cold. Mr. Mitchell, the property you sold is a federally protected asset under the Witness Security Program. It cannot be sold, transferred, or accessed without explicit authorization from the U.S. Marshals Service and approval from federal prosecutors. The sale you conducted is not only void, it's a federal crime. The room erupted. Mom started crying. Dad was yelling questions. Aunt Diane was demanding explanations. Everyone quiet. Walsh's voice cut through the chaos. Ms. Mitchell is a protected federal witness. Her location, her assets, and her identity are classified for her safety and for the integrity of an ongoing federal prosecution. The house in Philadelphia is registered under federal protection. Any attempt to sell, access, or transfer that property without proper authorization constitutes obstruction of justice and fraud. I didn't know, Derek stammered. She never told us. She couldn't tell you, Walsh interrupted. That's what classified means, Mr. Mitchell. And claiming ignorance doesn't excuse the fact that you forged federal documents and sold government-protected property. I didn't forge anything. I had power of attorney. Show me the document, Walsh demanded. Derek fumbled with his phone, pulled up the image and showed it to Walsh. The marshals studied it for approximately 3 seconds. This is fraudulent, he said flatly. Ms. Mitchell was in federal protective custody on the date this document claims to have been notarized. She was in Oregon. The notary stamp is fake. The signature is forged. And even if it were real, it would be void. Protected witnesses cannot grant power of attorney over federal assets without Marshals Service approval. How was I supposed to know that? Derek shouted. You weren't, I said quietly. Because I couldn't tell you. I witnessed federal crimes, Derek. I testified against dangerous people. The Marshals Service has been protecting me for 3 years while the prosecution built their case. That house isn't mine anymore. It's a federal asset held in trust until the trial concludes, and it's safe for me to reclaim it. You're a witness? Mom whispered. Against who? I can't tell you that, I said. I've never been able to tell you. That's why I disappeared. That's why I couldn't visit. That's why everything has been classified. But you let us think, Dad started. I let you think whatever you needed to think, I interrupted, because the alternative was telling you the truth and potentially putting you in danger. The people I testified against are part of an organization that's killed witnesses before. The Marshals Service relocated me, changed my routines, and put my assets under protection to keep me safe. And to keep you safe by keeping you ignorant. Jesus Christ, Uncle Mike breathed. Derek was shaking. The sale. The buyers. Will be contacted by federal authorities, Walsh said. The sale is void. Any money transferred will be frozen and returned. Any documents filed will be sealed. And you, Mr. Mitchell, will be facing federal charges for fraud, forgery, and obstruction of a federal witness protection program. I didn't mean to. Doesn't matter, the younger Marshal, Chin said, having finished his phone call. Intent isn't required for these charges. You sold federal property. That's enough. Amanda was crying now. What's going to happen to him? That depends, Walsh said, looking at me. Ms. Mitchell, do you wish to press charges? The room held its breath. I looked at Derek. My older brother who'd bullied me throughout childhood. Who'd called me weak, called me a failure, called me a coward for running away. Who'd just admitted to forging my signature and stealing nearly $1 million. Yes, I said quietly. I do. Sarah, no. Mom screamed. He's your brother. He's a criminal, I said. He forged federal documents. He committed fraud. He sold property that was under federal protection, potentially compromising an active witness security case. If the people I'm testifying against found out about this sale, if they tried to trace the property records, they could have found me. Derek didn't just steal money, he potentially endangered my life. I didn't know, Derek whispered. You didn't care, I corrected. You saw an opportunity to take what you thought was mine and you took it. You didn't call me. Didn't ask permission. Didn't question why the house was empty. You just assumed I'd abandoned it, assumed I'd failed at something else, and decided you deserved the money more than I did. We're family, Dad said desperately. You can't do this to family. Family doesn't steal from each other, I said. Family doesn't forge signatures. Family doesn't sell property that isn't theirs. You want to talk about abandonment? Derek just tried to steal nearly $1 million from me and give you $200,000 of it. That's not family. That's theft. Walsh pulled out handcuffs. Derek Mitchell, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and obstruction of justice in relation to a federal witness protection program. You have the right to remain silent. The scene devolved into chaos. Amanda was screaming. Mom was sobbing. Dad was shouting at me, calling me heartless, calling me a traitor. I stood quietly and watched as Walsh handcuffed my brother and led him toward the door. Ms. Mitchell, Chin said to me, we need to relocate you immediately. This incident has compromised your current security protocols. Pack whatever you brought. You're coming with us. I understand, I said. Sarah, don't do this, Mom begged, grabbing my arm. Don't take him away. He made a mistake. He didn't know. He didn't ask, I said, gently removing her hand. He saw an opportunity to profit from what he thought was my failure and he took it. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. You're destroying this family, Dad said, his voice shaking with rage. No, I said calmly. Derek destroyed it when he committed federal crimes. I'm just letting the consequences play out. I followed Chin to the door, leaving behind Mom's birthday party, the uneaten cake, and the family that had never understood why I'd disappeared. In the government SUV, Walsh turned to me from the front seat. You okay? I'm fine, I said. That was your brother. I know. This is going to be all over the news, he warned. Federal witnesses' brother arrested for fraud. It'll complicate the trial. Will it compromise the case? I asked. No. The case is solid. But it'll add media attention. Make things harder for you. Harder than the past 3 years? I asked quietly. He smiled slightly. Fair point. We drove to a safe house in Delaware, a nondescript townhouse that would be my home until the trial concluded in 4 months. Chin and another marshal swept it for security while Walsh briefed me on the new protocols. Your brother will likely take a plea deal, he said. Federal charges, clear evidence. His lawyers will want to avoid trial. What's he looking at? 2 to 5 years probably. Depends on the judge. The prosecutors are pretty angry. Witness protection violations are taken seriously. And the money? Already frozen. The buyers will get their $875,000 back. Your house is still secure, still under federal protection. Nothing actually changed except Derek's freedom. I nodded slowly. For what it's worth, Walsh said, you did the right thing. If you'd let it go, if you'd tried to handle it privately, it could have compromised everything. The organization you're testifying against has people looking for any weakness. A property sale on record with your name attached? They'd have found it eventually. I know, I said. Over the next few weeks, The story played out exactly as Walsh predicted. Derek's arrest made headlines. Federal witness's brother charged with fraud. The news stories portrayed me as either a hero for standing up to corruption or a villain for prosecuting my own brother. My family chose the villain narrative. Mom gave an interview to a local news station, tearfully explaining that I'd abandoned them, that Derek had only tried to help, that I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. Dad released a statement calling me cold and unforgiving. Aunt Diane started a GoFundMe for Derek's legal defense. I watched it all from the safe house, sitting on a government-issued couch, eating government-provided meals, and preparing for the trial that had consumed 3 years of my life. Derek took a plea deal. 3 years in federal prison, 5 years supervised release, full restitution of all funds. Amanda filed for divorce 2 weeks later. The trial I was testifying in concluded successfully. The prosecution secured convictions against all 7 defendants. Money laundering, racketeering, conspiracy. The criminal organization was dismantled. My testimony had been crucial. 6 months after Derek's arrest, I was released from witness protection. The threats had been neutralized. I could reclaim my life. I returned to Philadelphia on a cold Tuesday morning, Deputy Marshal Walsh escorting me to my house for the first time in 3 years. It looked exactly as I'd left it. The federal property management team had maintained it perfectly. Fresh paint, manicured lawn, updated appliances. But more importantly, it was mine again. Truly mine. Market value is over $950,000 now, Walsh said, handing me the keys. You could sell it if you wanted. I think I'll keep it, I said. For a while anyway. I'd already accepted a new position, senior forensic accountant with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. The work I'd done uncovering the money laundering had impressed the right people. My salary would be $156,000 annually with federal benefits and a security clearance. The job started in 3 weeks. I spent the first week back in my house just existing in it, remembering what it felt like to have a home. A place that was mine that I could stay in without looking over my shoulder. My family reached out exactly once. Mom sent an email. Derek is suffering in prison because of you. I hope you're happy. You've destroyed this family. We want nothing to do with you ever again. I read it once, then deleted it. I hadn't destroyed anything. I'd simply refused to let my brother's crimes go unpunished because we shared DNA. I'd chosen justice over family loyalty, integrity over convenience. The decision had cost me my family's approval. But I still had my house, my career, my freedom, my integrity, and honestly, that was worth more than their approval had ever been. 3 months later, I was sitting in my home office reviewing case files for the FBI when my doorbell rang. I checked the security camera, a feature I'd added immediately upon returning, and saw a woman I didn't recognize. Mid-40s, professional clothing, nervous expression. I opened the door cautiously. Can I help you? Ms. Mitchell? Sarah Mitchell? Yes. I'm Jennifer Walsh. I'm an attorney representing your brother Derek. I started to close the door. Wait, please. She held up her hands. I'm not here to harass you or ask you to drop charges. Derek asked me to deliver something. She pulled an envelope from her briefcase. What is it? I asked. A letter. He's been in prison for 6 months now. He's had a lot of time to think. He asked me to give this to you. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Anything else? He's genuinely sorry, Jennifer said quietly. For what it's worth. He understands what he did was wrong. Not just legally wrong, morally wrong. He stole from you. He betrayed your trust. He put your safety at risk. He knows that now. Good for him, I said. He doesn't expect forgiveness. He just wanted you to know. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the envelope for 20 minutes before opening it. The letter was handwritten, 4 pages long. Sir, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to care. But Jennifer said she'd try to deliver it, so I'm writing anyway. You were right about everything. I sold your house because I could. Because I wanted the money. Because I'd convinced myself you didn't deserve it, that you'd abandoned it, that you'd abandoned us. I told myself I was being responsible, cleaning up your mess, doing what needed to be done. But the truth is simpler and uglier. I was jealous. You bought that house when you were 26 years old. I was 29 and still renting. You had a successful career, a beautiful home, your whole life figured out. And I resented it. I resented you. When you disappeared 3 years ago, when you stopped coming to family events and wouldn't explain why, I was almost happy. Finally, Sarah had failed at something. Finally, the perfect little sister had screwed up. I never considered that you might have a good reason for disappearing. I never thought maybe you were in trouble, maybe you needed help, maybe something serious was happening. I just saw an opportunity. The house was empty. You weren't there. And I knew where you kept your important documents from when I'd helped you move in years ago. I knew your signature. I knew how to forge it. I told myself I was helping. But I was stealing. From my own sister. I didn't know about witness protection. I didn't know about the federal investigation. But even if I had known, I'm not sure I would have acted differently. I was that far gone in my resentment. Prison has given me a lot of time to think about who I've become. About the person I was to you growing up. The bullying, the dismissal, the constant criticism. I was the older brother. I should have protected you. Instead, I tore you down every chance I got. You deserved better. You deserved a brother who celebrated your success instead of resenting it. Who trusted you instead of assuming the worst. Who asked questions instead of making judgments. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. I'm not asking you to drop charges or show mercy. You did the right thing, and I respect that, even though it's costing me 3 years of my life. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I did. I understand what I've always done to you. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry for selling your house. I'm sorry for forging your signature. I'm sorry for stealing your money. I'm sorry for putting your safety at risk. But mostly, I'm sorry for being a terrible brother for 32 years. You're going to do great things, Sarah. You already have. I hope someday I'll be able to read about your success without feeling jealous. I hope someday I'll have become the kind of person who can be proud of you instead of resentful. I've got 3 years in here to work on it. I hope you have a good life. You've earned it. Derek. I read the letter twice, then set it down on the kitchen table. It was a good apology. Honest, specific, taking full responsibility without making excuses. It didn't change anything. Derek would serve his sentence. He'd be released in 2.5 years with good behavior. He'd rebuild his life somehow. And I'd continue with mine. Maybe someday, years from now, we'd have a relationship again. Maybe the prison time would genuinely change him. Maybe he'd become the brother he should have been all along. Or maybe not. Either way, I'd be fine. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer in my home office. Not thrown away, but not displayed either. Just filed. Part of the record. Part of the story. Then I went back to my case files. Back to the work of tracking financial crimes and building cases against people who thought they could steal without consequences. It was good work. Important work. And I was very, very good at it. 3 years later, Derek was released from federal prison. I heard about it through Aunt Diane's Facebook post. Welcome home, Derek. We missed you. He never contacted me directly. Mom and Dad retired to Florida. I sent them a card when they moved but received no response. My career flourished. I was promoted to Assistant Special Agent in charge of the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. I led investigations that recovered hundreds of millions in stolen assets. I became an expert witness, testifying in federal cases across the country. I eventually sold the Philadelphia house for $1.2 million and bought a beautiful brownstone in Washington, D.C., closer to FBI headquarters. I dated occasionally, made friends in my new city, lived a quiet and successful life. And I never, not once, regretted pressing charges against my brother. Because some things are more important than family loyalty. Things like integrity, justice, the rule of law. Things like knowing that you stood up for yourself, that you refused to let someone steal from you just because you shared DNA. Things like being able to look at yourself in the mirror and know you did the right thing even when it was the hardest thing. That's worth more than any family approval could ever be. That's worth everything.